I had a series of questions that we've thought about, and you can just introduce yourself as you start and try to address those and make some general comments, I think, about what's happening in each of your organizations. But I wanted to say, first, it's kind of a two-part question. But what got you personally, or your organization, interested in collaboration and shared services, and who did you have to convince to make it happen, to get the ball rolling? Tom, would you like to start?
Yeah, I think this is on. Yeah. Our first effort in Tallmadge was around dispatch. We were presented with the prospect of replacing our dispatch council and some other things. It was going to cost us $1 million to $1.5 million. And the mayor at that time, Chris Grimm, said he was kind of crazy because I'm sure the communities around us are looking at the same kind of expenditures. Was there something we could do together? And so we did, and we ended up, after a long process, we ended up with moving our dispatch center to Stowe with several other communities. And we looked at that experience, and the first time Tallmadge had done anything like that, and said, gosh, this was really a successful thing. One of the things Randy showed on the slides earlier was that our general fund balance, which is generally in the neighborhood of $2 million, through the recession, it's gone up now. It's almost $6 million. So we've almost tripled our general fund balance just in terms of cost savings. When we saw the financial reward and the service, and I want to compliment Mayor Pritchell and Mayor Drew. You can't collaborate unless you have willing people on the other end to collaborate with. But that kind of got us into a mode of what else can we do? What are some other things? And so we've worked with Russ Fry. We've moved our building department to Summit County. We've been doing some things in the IT area. We've been involved with the Joint Economic Development District with Springfield Township, and it's proved to be a very successful experience. I define it successful because we are saving a lot of money. It's actually fun to put the budget together this year, but we also, our citizens don't know we've done any of these things. They pick up the phone, they have no idea someone in Stowe is answering the phone. So it's been a really successful experience, and part of that is because our citizens aren't negatively impacted by what we did. We didn't lay off police officers, firefighters, or whatever.
Well, Mayor, do you have the same experience?
Similar. I come from a background in the safety services. I was a firefighter for both the city of Twinsburg and the city of Streetsboro, and in that process, we utilize mutual aid all the time, to bring in extra forces when we need them. And when I became mayor in 2011, I noticed that we don't utilize the same type of services for our service departments. November 2003, we had a tornado go through the northwest corner of Twinsburg, and our service department guys were out there for probably about three and a half days straight, picking up trees, cutting down trees, removing debris and everything else. And these guys were really worked hard. And when I look at the fire service, when we have a big fire or a big incident, we bring extra forces in, we get the problem taken care of, we go home. But here I saw these service guys that were, working endlessly. So just after I got elected, I reached out to mayors and service directors in the surrounding communities to see if we couldn't come up with a plan to create a mutual aid system for service departments, because it had not existed. And our little group has grown pretty well. We reached out probably 2 or 3 communities beyond our own borders. What originally started in communities just bordering the city of Streetsboro, we've reached beyond that. And now this group has taken on a life of its own. Kelly Engelhart and Gene Roberts from the city of Kent have taken to cataloging all of the equipment that is around our area, so that if someone needs something or someone sees something that they need, we can reach out and reach out to other communities and use it. We're finding things every time we meet that we can help each other on. And when we help each other, it saves us money, it saves our citizens money, it saves everybody money. One of the things that we saw initially was a survey, I believe it was from up in Lake County, where they took a survey of the equipment and how often they use it. And they had pieces of equipment that individual communities were using only about 7% of the year. And everybody knows that equipment is very expensive. So you have individual communities that are spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a piece of equipment that when they're not using it is just sitting. Well, we knew that there was a better way. Our group is in its infancy. We'll have our second year anniversary here in January, and we've already made pretty significant headway, and we continue to expand. Every time we get together, we find something else that we can share and that we can do. And it's something that we have to keep on doing in order to stretch our dollars. It's very important to me. It's very important to all the other mayors and service directors that are on the group with us. And what I really like about our group is we don't pay any dues. I don't even think we have a formal name.
Oh, we do now.
We do have a formal name now.
Used to be the no-name group.
Yeah, but it's a willingness of all these city leaders to get together and break down the barriers and be able to come to the table and to collaborate and to work with each other to stretch our tax dollars as far as they can be stretched. And I love working with it because every time we go, we find something new. And we're going to continue to get better. I totally believe in the shared services concept, and we'll go and continue to try and expand this as much as we possibly can.
Well, you've got everybody hanging. What's the name of the group?
Oh, gosh. Tom is our elected leader.
Remember, you're on YouTube.
They elected me the leader as long as they realized I had no power. So it's the 40 Summit Mayors, Managers, and Service Directors.
No cool acronym, okay? I mean, you can have something
That's a mock-up.
I don't want to sound like I'm going back on things I said earlier, but you guys do need some PR help. So I'm not asking for an expansion of bureaucracy, but please, if someone would share some PR help with the group, I think they might need it. Frank, before we go on to our state speaker, can you talk about your community and how you got started and who you had to convince that shared service was the right idea and some of what you're doing?
Well, I was asked to come into the group after it was developed, and I was asked by our mayor if I would represent the city of Hudson in this endeavor. And of course I said yes. I'm glad to do that. And quite frankly, to get back to what Mr. Cole had mentioned, a lot of the service divisions are doing this anyway. It happens every day. You just may not realize it, but it does happen all the time. This was just a formal way of sitting down and expanding on that. And I found it very valuable, and I think your support network has to be obviously your administration and your city councils. And we were able to take Streetsboro's idea of a mutual aid service agreement and get that through our council. It was very well supported, and it is a good idea. Not that any one of these communities would not come to the aid of another community if they needed it, but this formalized it and made it possible for us to make those decisions when they're needed. So that's how I got involved, and I am pretty impressed on how far we've moved along with just a minimal amount of meetings. For me, I was on a subcommittee. We had two subcommittees, and we decided that the mutual aid and the equipment sharing were two very valuable resources. We also felt that we could institute those right off the bat, and I think that has happened. So you do need that support. I think the mutual aid is great. It gives us the ability to call on the communities when we need them, and vice versa. So that was the first step. Second step was building the equipment list, and that's a program in and of its own, and I think that'll grow as well. I'm preparing to talk to some communities about joint purchases for equipment, because a lot of the equipment we need is just not funded. It's very expensive, and we need to look at different ways of getting those jobs done, sharing the equipment, especially the large pieces of equipment. So we've got good support, and I think this group has a good future. And we'll go far beyond our careers, I hope.
I don't know. I want to stick around for a while.
Don't sell the mayor short.
Yeah.
Dave, before we get to you, I just wanted to clarify one thing. Mayor Broska brought up the Lake County audit that was done by the Auditor of State of the Equipment Inventory. That 7% figure isn't on a 24-hour day or anything. It's not just like 7% of a 9,600-hour year, 8,600-hour year. That's 7% of a 40-hour work week year-round is how much that equipment, in many cases, on average, was being utilized. So we're not talking about stretching things to the max. So, Mr. Ray, ODOT has the opportunity to share services with other state agencies and with local government. So is it a different experience from that level, working between the layers of government? I mean, how did you guys get started in it and the drive behind it, and who do you have to convince that some of that sharing is a good idea?
Well, I'll give you the selfish answer on how I got started. It was put on my evaluation. So my supervisor, Tony Rankard, said, we're going to do agility agreements. And that's the personal selfish reason. But the real life, probably best example that I can give is we had a maintenance garage. I work with folks that plow snow and fix potholes and repair guardrail and take care of traffic signals. We had a maintenance garage in Portage County that had a structural problem, and it really became a safety issue for our folks. And the shared service became the real common sense decision of moving our county maintenance garage in with the city of Ravenna's street department. So this was very unique, and when it came to convincing people, very difficult in that it started around August, and I needed to have them in that city service garage and up and running by October, because we all know in Northeast Ohio it's going to snow. And I didn't want to drop the ball anywhere on Interstate 76 in Portage County, and it became critical. So as far as who to convince, that is kind of a neat question. I didn't have to convince upper management because they were convinced. And I saw that our frontline management, our county manager and the city of Ravenna Street Department supervisor, they were on board. And of course, if they're not, I guess you can get rid of them. But they were. So we had upper management and we had frontline management on board. To me, the convincing needed to be the people that were going to do the work and be the shared service. And the best way I can tell you that we used to convince those folks that this was the right way to go was get them involved. You have to get your employees involved that are operating the equipment, that are sharing the services. And we did that by bringing all of our folks together, and we went through a process. It's called storyboarding. I really stole it from Disney and storyboards related to doing an animation project, and we got through the problems by storyboarding and came up with solutions, and the workers put the plan together as far as how are we going to do this and get it done and take care of our customers in the winter and be coexistent with the city street department.
That's great. Along those lines, what you just brought up was the method of doing it for you was the storyboarding. I guess a follow-up to that, is there something that you guys have started to try that hasn't worked? You know, it was maybe a bridge too far. That was a pun.
Transportation guy.
Transportation guy, you know. I worked in a county engineer's office. But, you know, it was a bridge too far, and, you know, and it just didn't work. You might tell people to, you know, go about it differently, or, you know, what those concerns might be. Or if there was something that seemed like it was too much, but you found a way to overcome it. Frank, do you have any of those examples? Or
Well, I'm not quite there yet, I think, with the shared services, but I've involved our frontline managers with compiling the equipment lists and getting these onto the website. So although we're in the infancy, I have involved the entire Public Works frontline manager staff with getting that information in for everybody to have access to. That in itself was very new and unorthodox for my staff. Building some type of a database for other communities to take advantage of. So it speaks a little bit to your hurdles with getting people on board. They have to be on board. And I think our people, we have great staff at City Hudson Public Works, and they're open to it, but they're hesitant. And that's understandable, and you have to kind of coach them through it. So I think looking forward, as we try and get some of the shared services on board, that will be one of the hurdles. And I think I'm hearing that from all the communities, that you really have to keep an eye on that, because it is a hurdle you'll run into. And you can get over that hurdle. You just need to coach them through it and make them see the benefits of it. Because it is very unorthodox. It's a very unorthodox way of getting services ready to be provided.
what I hope is 10, 20 years from now, somebody has a session saying, the way we used to do things, and that's considered unorthodox, but that's one man's vision for the rest of our careers. David, thoughts along the same lines?
We didn't really run into big problems. I guess we're doing this across 6 counties, so I can give you some general problems. But we saw some real success stories. If I can just hit 2 that come to mind. One was I was out on a job. We were doing a full depth repair, and it just shows you how cool this really is. And we've got a whole crew doing the work, and there's a backhoe there, and there's a backhoe operator. And I said to the manager, I said, who's that on the backhoe? I don't recognize that person. And he laughed, and he said, well, that's a City of Ravenna employee. You know, and then, by the way, it's their backhoe. Mm-hmm. So it's really unique to see that working alongside and with our crew. And then the last story that's a real success story. I just wanted to let everyone know. We had a flagger that got hit by a tow truck. Thank goodness he's alive. He was thrown almost 35 feet. And this was in Trumbull County, not Portage County, where we worked together with the City of Ravenna. And we did a benefit for his family to help with medical expenses. And that what we did was we put together like picnic baskets, and you could buy a picnic basket, big, kind of a thing, and you could do your own benefit and raise money. So we did that across our 6 counties. I saw that it really worked. The City of Ravenna got involved and did that with their crews. So they raised money for our flagger that got hit, that they never met in a county that they were never at. And that's a real success story. So bridges too far, I guess the only thing that I can say that I've seen, and this is no offense to any attorneys in the room. These are
shoot. You bring up a good point. I asked about media.
But where I've seen it go not good is when you get the law department or the attorneys involved. They are good folks, and they're looking out for you from a different side of things. But quite frankly, we can do these agreements. We've done these agreements with emails, and they are common sense agreements at a very local level. And I don't believe, as long as they're not complicated, I don't believe you need a legal document to do that.
Mayor?
Just, to reiterate a little bit, the success of this program, and we can point to one of our first successes, or actually a success for the group, was a collaboration between Ravenna, Stowe, and Kent on the purchase of an asphalt recycler. And there was a funny story told yesterday that the machine had some issues with it, and once they got the issues fixed with the machine, it's starting to they're starting to be able to use it. And we mentioned yesterday we bought a new machine in the city of Streetsboro to fix areas of the road. Well, combined with the asphalt recycler that they purchased and the ability to use our new machine, it's going to help us to permanently fix potholes in the middle of winter where we couldn't do that before. And it's going to add to the ability to make our roads a little bit smoother for our taxpayers year round. I just can't say enough about the ability for this program to expand, and nothing is off the table. Every time we meet, we come up with something new that we can find to expand this program. And as long as we continue to do that, our group is going to be successful. And our group is just, because we're not formal, it's not centered just with us. Anybody that wants to come and join join the group, all you have to do is get hold of Tom or get hold of any one of us, and you're more than welcome to come in and sit in. And I look at it as an ever expanding program.
Or they can just contact the directly, I'm sure. Tom, you mentioned one of your best examples, and one of the first things that started was this shared dispatch. And you guys have done so much, I showed on the slide, since then. But we've talked about getting workers involved, management involved, but you had a public element related to shared dispatch. And, your comments today are, citizens don't really notice today that there has been a change, but they all seem to notice there was going to be a change. I think you've told the story before. There were some ads in the newspaper about what this change was going to be. So if you want to tell a little bit of that story, and how do you get the public to buy in, because we have elected and appointed officials who have to answer to people who they run into at the grocery store. So what if they don't understand the change, or they're hearing the wrong stories about the impacts? How do you overcome that, Tom?
Yeah, I think when we first started getting involved in these collaborative efforts, I expected the problems to be with the elected officials. The mayors aren't going to buy into this or something. And my experience has been just the opposite. The elected officials are the easiest. In fact, they're the people who are pushing for a lot of this. They're really the forward-thinking people. Our problem, especially with the dispatch, in fact, with most of these, has been with our own employees, getting them on board that some of these things are going to occur. I can recall a meeting I was at with the previous mayor where we all sat around the table and the department heads explained why an idea was not a good idea. There were too many problems. It was actually a good idea, but it couldn't be done. And look at all these problems. And in some ways, it was really good. The mayor was a little bit hard-headed on it. He said, now that we know what the problems are, you're the department head, your job is to help me solve them. We are going to do this. And so it was we're going to do it. And our council was supportive of it. We had council meetings that were filled with public employees in various departments saying this won't work. They took ads out in the Tallmadge Express. They took ads out in the Stowe Sentry saying this won't work. And I have to give a lot of credit. The city council, for example, on the dispatch, approved it unanimously. Said, we're doing this. It's for the good of the citizens. So those kinds of problems certainly exist. Glenn mentioned whatever this group's name is. And one of the really hard things, I mentioned at the meeting yesterday, if the Soviets were really smart, they would have never built a wall in the middle of Berlin. They'd have put a county line there. And I find it amazing. I never knew any of the mayors in Streetsboro. That was like another country, and now all of a sudden I'm talking to the city manager and the mayor in Kent in Streetsboro, and to the we got involved with Portage County in a mapping program that Glenn or someone I'm sure will talk about in terms of emergency mapping. And all of a sudden I find myself working with Brian Kelly, who you mentioned earlier, who's the IT person in Portage County. That wall has come down, and it's now acceptable to talk to people across that line. I talk to people in Ravenna on a regular basis.
Well, we filled in the moat.
Yeah, and some of this is I think we're used to behaving certain ways. We in Tallmadge never had a health department. And no one in Tallmadge thinks it's a big deal not to have a health department. Yet in some other parts of Summit County, it was a major issue that we discussed. Should we go to the county health department? And a lot of this is what you're used to doing. I was talking to some people in another state where they have countywide school districts. There's like 80 school districts. I'm talking to them, they're kind of amazed that we have 600 and some school districts. I was reading an article on police departments. Now I'll shut up. Great Britain has something like 54 police departments. Canada has something in the neighborhood of 170 or 180 law enforcement agencies. In the United States, we can't really count them because we have so many. So I can only give you the range. There's somewhere between 18,000 and 21,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States.
We have 937 in the state of Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, I find it amazing that our range of 3,000 is considerably larger than the 170 or the 50. The Canada and Great Britain can actually count how many law enforcement agencies they have. But I'm not suggesting we could have 50 law enforcement agencies in the United States or 170. But maybe instead of 18 or 21,000, maybe we could have 15,000 or 10,000. Could we possibly get by with a nation with 10,000 police departments? A lot of this is what we're used to, and we've got to somehow break those chains.
I have a couple additional follow-up, but I think we have a microphone. If there are questions now from the audience about what they've heard, I'd really like to get to those.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment, and Dr. Pascarella would agree. We have a group called Efficient Gov Network. It was
That's a much better name.
EGN. We meet the third Tuesday of the month at the Village of Richfield. Mayor Bashir has been very gracious to host our organization. But if you want to know more and hear more about what these fine gentlemen are doing, you need to attend these meetings. We do have a local government innovation fund grant for a study to see the feasibility of us being more formally organized. But we've been meeting, has it been 3-4 years?
Yeah.
About 3 or 4
About
years.
4 years.
And I encourage local governments, universities, I mean, we're all there. It's educators, it's government leaders, it's the people that do the real work, all of our employees. But it's a wonderful organization. I encourage you to attend. Thank you.
We've got a question over here.
Well, I can yell.
Oh, great. Here, this is how it starts.
Can someone comment on a possible union pushback on some of this? I mean, previously working with Dave Ray, what have you. I know there's always an issue with labor at times on doing consolidations and what have you. Was that an issue when the counties and cities came together?
Who would like to touch the third rail first?
We sat down with the union and the city and explained to them that this is not something for the mutual aid agreement for the service department. You know, police and fire have been doing it for years and years and years. And we thought that there might be some pushback from the service department. And so we sat down with them and explained to them what we were trying to do and what we were trying to accomplish. And told them that this is not something that is going to occur on a daily basis. If we use this type of agreement, you know, a couple times a year, it's going to be a lot. And it's not going to affect their overtime. You know, come winter time, when chances are something like this would be used, they're going to get their overtime with the snow plows. And what we made sure that we told them was that this is not something that is going to be used to replace you on a snow plow, okay, or to replace for a water line break. It is something that is going to be used in a dire emergency where the need far exceeds the capability of what we have. And we haven't really got any pushback yet. You know, you tell them, pie is only so big, and we only have so many people within this city that can do the job. And when you have to go outside, it's because the need does exceed. And we really haven't had any issues yet.
Other thoughts on that?
Well, I agree, and I think our union was the same way. And we kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, we discussed this as a group in terms of keeping it simple by not changing or tampering with wages, with benefits, with any of that. We just simply said it's a volunteer program. If we need you, you come. If you need us, we come, to put it simply. And our people stay employed by our entity, your people stay employed by them. The management was discussed, and it's all in the agreement. So, to answer your question, it doesn't change anything for the actual worker. I would think that in certain events, yes, you may have an argument saying that with extra people coming in from the outside, that's taking away work. But I don't think that's a valid argument in an emergency situation. You know, in an emergency situation, it's different. And you got to make decisions quickly. And we've all been there. So I don't think that's a valid argument. I think we covered it very well in the agreement.
Yeah.
We had tons of pushback on the dispatch. They took out ads with little caricatures of firemen carrying babies out of burning buildings. And, there was a lot of pushback. Fortunately, when the prior union contract had been negotiated, there had been a provision put in on consolidation into the union contract. I don't think the union thought it would ever happen. I think they thought, this is about as pie in the sky as it can possibly be. And then when we said we were going to execute that provision, it was a rude awakening. But part of our agreement with Stowe was that Stowe hired our dispatchers. And so they went from being Tallmadge dispatchers to being Stowe dispatchers. No one was laid off. In the process, in fact, as I recall, Stowe actually paid about 20 or 25 cents an hour more than the city paid. The city of Tallmadge paid, and so they actually got a slight increase as they went to Stowe. But no, it wasn't easy, and there was a lot of pushback, and there was a lot of resistance.
I have a quick comment on that, and then I think a final question. I am trying to moderate this panel in a way not to cut anything off, but so that you get a restroom break before lunch. Always a good thing, right? I was talking to a Democrat county commissioner down in Central Ohio who talked about the union thing. He said a big part of it was just not having exposure. You know, people in the auditor's office who could have shared skills with the recorder's office. They started off simply with a shared receptionist and some other things, but in the end, the way it was positioned by him was there's more job security for you, especially with attrition, than there is or with potential budget cuts. And that was a big way they overcame that hurdle was, look, if you get some of these shared skills and cross-training, you can weather even more storms, and as an organization, we can live with attrition instead of layoffs. And that was a big selling point, so I really appreciated that. The other one was a school superintendent who in a meeting told me, well, Randy, we wanted to do this, but our union won't let us. And I can understand that. I appreciate that. I worked for an administration that supported Senate Bill 5. Yeah, you're allowed to laugh at that, too. Something about firefighters and babies and things. I mean, it was a rough time. But I looked at him and I said, I can appreciate that. I understand that. I said, so why don't you share yourself or a management employee not in the bargaining unit and show them that it'll work? Well, I thought his head was going to explode, because there's another way to do it, right? We do have shared treasurers and shared superintendents in 20-some school districts around the state of Ohio. He did not like that short answer, though. Try with management then. He wanted to just raise the objection and show why it couldn't be done. Do we have another question from the audience? Did I see a hand going up over here? Just scratching. This isn't an auction. You can raise your hand without fear of costing yourself anything. Any final questions? If not, I have a final question for the panelists. One of my favorite shows was West Wing, and my wife bought me the whole collection. And in that show, President Bartlett would usually finish a segment or finish a scene with "What's next?" And so I ask you guys, what's next? You talked about what you're doing, but where is this going to go? What's the next thing you're working on in the shared services area? Tom, you want to start?
Yeah, I think there are 3 or 4 areas. We're doing some stuff on with IT. I mentioned to Randy last week. We had looked for some time about running fiber optics to Akron U. But one of the things we've realized that we ought to be collaborating with entities other than cities and villages, that we can really collaborate with universities and other groups. And so we used the LGIF grant that a group of us secured and actually looked at this issue. We had anticipated it would run us about $1 million to run fiber optics to Akron U. And in this process, I learned that there's something called an educational service center. I don't know how many of you are familiar with them.
Well, I can point them out to you. You talk, Tom, I'll be manna.
Okay. Is there a G?
Education service centers. So you work for a city and a village, and there's an education service center, and I think you're going to bring up information technology centers, which weren't created until way up here in 1979. So, okay, next letter.
But one of the things that came out of it was, well, how could we get to Akron U? We've done this study, the sport's done, and amongst other things, to my surprise, there's these entities called educational service centers, and they've run fiber optic all over Ohio. And we've run fiber optic to our new high school. And the new high school has fiber optics to the Educational Service Center. And the Educational Service Center has fiber optics to Akron U. To make a long story short, there's a line that comes into the high school from the city here, and there's a line that comes in from the Educational Service Center here, and there's a panel in between. I looked at our IT guy, I said, can you connect those? And he said, yeah. I said, well, what would that involve? He said, next year I could put it in the budget. I said, okay, and what would that involve? He said, probably looking at $300 to $400. Compared to the $1 million estimate. So sometimes it just kind of helps to talk to other people, and information comes out.
With that, we should do a rim shot and end, right?
But also, yesterday at the No Name Group, I think we should probably go back to the No Name Group.
I think it's Pechiero.
I happened to run into Brian Kelly again, the IT guy from Portage County. We got involved in an effort yesterday at the meeting. One of the areas we're looking at is they're able to take and map, and they did it for Tallmadge as a demo. They're able to map all of our fire calls, all of our EMS calls, and they're busy plotting all of our our police calls, and they'll do it by type, whether advanced life support was required on an EMS call or what. So there's a whole wealth of information. And they've developed maps with hot points in Tallmadge. And we've been talking about maybe we should build a new station, a fire station. Well, now we've got all these hot points located. And actually, one of the sites that we thought would be a great place for a fire station, we looked at these hot points and said, why are we thinking about that? We should be over here. But as the meeting progressed, we began to say, you know, we should get all 13 communities doing this, because maybe we should be sharing some $1 million ladder trucks with those communities that are next to us. And so they gave me the charge to try and get this data together. And Brian is willing to do it. The cost of the effort is wonderful. It's free. And so hopefully by our January meeting, we will have mapped the 13 communities, all the fire calls, all the EMS calls, all the police calls, and be having a discussion of, you know, does it make sense to build a fire station maybe in this part of your community and put $1 million ladder truck in there that is shared by 2 or 3 communities? I think that's where we're headed. And so I think that's really exciting, because I look at our budget, and a major share of our budget goes for police and fire. If we can start saving some money there, we can really save some money. That $6 million fund balance could be 10. And so I think that's a really exciting thing to do. And it's coming from just talking to Brian Kelly and him saying, hey, I can do those kinds of things for you. It'll have a tremendous impact on the 13 communities.
I really just want to see how far we can actually go with this. Because we are in its infancy, there's so much area to expand. We have reached out to our school system, and I've reached out, to a neighboring community. In fact, my law director, my HR guy, I share them with the city of Twinsburg. It's a cost savings for both of us to be able to do something like that. Sharing the school system, we're in the process of trying to get a new city hall. Those of you that don't know, our city hall is a 50-year-old school that costs about 5 times as much to heat and to cool, well, when you can get it to heat and to cool, than it would be in a new facility. And in this facility that we looked at, we had extra space in there. I offered it to the school system. They're basically in a 1,200 square foot building right now. We offered them 5,000 square feet to consolidate all their stuff in from some of their buildings. We wanted to share IT with them. We wanted to share payroll with them. We want to be able to share a common meeting room, conference rooms, bathrooms. The list goes on and on and on. And we are only limited by our imagination. If there is something that we can share, we will find a way to share it. Every time we do share it, it saves us money. And like Tom said, I'd like to see our bottom line continue to go up. Last year was the first year in our city. We returned back $2.2 million, and we started the year with $2.2 million. Never had happened before. And I want to continue that, because I want to be able to offer our citizens more in the forms of stuff to keep them in our city, parks and recreation, things that make for a better quality of life. And how we do that is by saving money in those other locations. Police and fire and service, they are by far my 3 biggest expenses. And if we can trim those in some way and keep those back, the $1 million ladder trucks. I have a fire chief that had it put into the zoning code that we could not have a building go over 5 stories because we didn't have a ladder truck that would reach above that. Well, I had to disagree with him. And I said, why do we as the city of Streetsboro need a ladder truck when I have one in Ravenna, one in Kent, one in Aurora, one in Hudson, 2 in Twinsburg, and not only do I get a ladder truck, I get 4 people to go with it. There was no reason at all for us to go out and buy a 109-foot ladder truck or a 105-foot ladder truck. and I think the remark was made yesterday, they make really good parade vehicles. And it's the truth. I mean, for more than a few communities around you to have this type of equipment, it's not the right way to go. And at $1 million a piece, and that's what they're up to now, it's crazy to spend that amount of money.
And yeah, I'll be brief because the food's coming. So what's next? I don't know what's next. Any given month, I get another idea from one of my managers, whether it's trading a snow route, sharing salt, making brine for someone, trading equipment with someone. I guess I'll challenge the audience that if you're city, township, county government, we've got county managers in 6 of our counties. Talk to them. It's on their evaluation. And ask them if you've got a good idea. And if you don't know who they are, ask me.
Well, for me, I think we finished up the equipment share portion of what we're doing in the group. And that's very, very close to being firmed up. And that was kind of my marching orders on the subcommittee. So that, for me, what's next is to get that taken care of. And again, we're very close to that list. And ODOT is participating in that as well. And there's a lot of equipment out there. So it's been very good. And I think, what I've heard from Tom and Mayor Streetsboro, all the areas that this collaboration is taking place, the City of Hudson Administration and Council realizes that there's value there. It's not something they haven't talked about. I don't think it's something that any of the cities have not done. So my goal is to keep working with the group and getting that information back to the administration and the council at Hudson, and letting them know what we're doing and where Hudson can be of value and participate. So that's my next goal, and I agree. Every time we have one of these meetings, something comes out of the loop, and you leave with something that you didn't have when you went. So it's a good program, and I'd encourage anybody to join us.
And it's always good food.
Yeah. Meetings and food. Thank you very much for your attention. How about a hand for our panelists?
And I'd like to just, on behalf of AMATS, thank all of you guys for a great panel. Thank you, Randy, for giving a really provoking, thought-provoking talk. And please enjoy your lunch.
I know. I said go for that 3 times. The airline's good. You got to get out on the source.